I was right. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Gus here. How you guys doing today? Remember a couple of videos back I told you guys that a drop would eventually become like a one-stop shop for absolutely everything you would need for a fully custom mechanical keyboard build? Well, you should, because again, only a couple of videos ago, what's going on with your memories, guys? Put that to work. Either way, that's what we're talking about today. This is the Drop Karina, a 60% fully mechanical keyboard build starter kit that doesn't come with absolutely everything you're seeing here, but it's right in line with what we were talking about before. Now, this particular kit came with the case, the PCB that's inside, the plate, stabs, the switches, and the keycaps. And everything put together is about $290. But since the keycaps and the switches at least are like everything goes, you can use your own, you can grab one from anywhere really. Today we're talking about the case, the PCB, and also the plate, sort of. And we're getting there. Now the case plus the PCB is a combo, which, by the way, you can't really get them like standalone from one another, but then again, why the hell would you want to anyway? But I mean, just know that you can't. That combo goes for about 120 bucks. And the plate, which is something that you would need to get this up and running either way, but doesn't come flat out with the combo itself, would cost you an extra 20, 30, or 40 bucks, depending on if you go for aluminum, brass, or copper as a material specifically, and respectively from the prices. Now the case itself is made out of acrylic, and this diffuser-like translucent look, which is one, very gorgeous, at least in my opinion, even with no lighting coming through it, but it also helps with diffusing all the illumination that comes from the PCB of the Karina itself. And the whole idea behind this thing is sort of a stargazing light show on your desk. And it delivers, it really does, because it diffuses the lighting in a way that just shines everywhere without making any of the LEDs super apparent, obviously because they are all facing down. Aside from the ones that are facing upwards from underneath your keycaps, everything else is facing downwards towards your desk and just spills all around, even upwards from the borders of the actual case. It's a gorgeous piece of illumination using 26 LEDs to achieve that. Now, on the back, there are two holes for the USB Type-C connectors from the PCB, which are pretty flush and unobtrusive, so I definitely don't think you would have any sort of problem if you would want to go for something fancier and use an aftermarket custom cable with your Karina as well. Underneath, there are 4 little rubber bars that act like feet to prevent it from sliding around your desktop. And all in all, this is actually quite hefty. This thing is much heavier than it looks compared to other stuff that I have here on the same, size category. So this isn't necessarily slipping around your desk either way, but it does come with the little rubber feet underneath to help out just a tiny little bit. And there's absolutely no height adjustment whatsoever. This particular sloping design is almost like a perfect fit for me, even though it's a tiny bit higher than I was expecting on the front side. Not exactly sure why, maybe it's just like an impression, but it fits awesomely perfect to my typing experience. It's been really, really nice to use the Karina as my main board from the moment it arrived to the studio and that I'd actually put it together. And this sort of trapezoidal shape from the undercarriage sloping inwards gives it such a distinctive look even from the sides. It doesn't just look like a block of translucent plastic with a bunch of LEDs. And again, just as I said before, I actually do think it looks quite nice even with no illumination turned on at all. I really like the design and shape of this case. Now, the PCB itself is a custom drop branded one, 2 USB Type-C ports on the back, which are not pass-through. They're just there for convenience so that you can plug either from the left or the right. Now, it is hot swap, so whichever switches you wish to use, try everything you want, plug stuff in, didn't like it, pull it back out, do something else with it, plug some different switch on. Nothing is going to be hindered by a process of having to solder and desolder stuff from this particular keyboard. Plus, it does support 5-pin switches. And trust me, that's a godsend because you don't need to clip anything, and that's so good. That's just so good. On the flip side of that coin though, it doesn't support south-facing switches. So if you already know that you want to use a specific keycap set that does have compatibility issues with north-facing switch mountings, then this would still be applicable to the Karina. So keep an eye out for that. As I said before, lighting is pretty damn cool on this thing. There's a bunch of LEDs pointing downwards to illuminate everything around, a bunch of LEDs pointing upwards. Everything is pre-configured on the board like every other keyboard from Drop, and you can reconfigure everything and work with layers and all that good stuff through QMK. So you wouldn't be left hanging without any sort of way to reconfigure what comes out of the box to something that would suit you a little bit better. One thing that I did notice though is that when you have every single area of illumination turned on, it looks gorgeous, but as soon as you turn one of them off, like for example you turn off the ambient illumination and let just the keycaps shine through, it does get a tiny bit brighter. Same thing goes the other way around. If you turn off the keycaps and leave the ambient illumination on, it also gets a little bit brighter. Nothing like extreme, it's just like if you're paying attention to it, you will see a tiny bit of a difference, and maybe that's a power thing, not really sure. And it's not a deal breaker, it's just, again, something that you may actually, see happening in front of you as you turn on and off the illumination options. And the last thing here would be the plates, which is something you absolutely need to get your board up and running, and because of the different densities and the materials you may choose, it will affect both the overall feel of the board and as well as the weight and how it sounds, because of each material obviously responding differently to your keycaps, bottoming out. In my case, I went for a copper plate specifically because it looks basically made to go hand in hand with the Holy Panda switches. It's just because of that. It had nothing to do with the actual sound of the board, although I do like copper plates in terms of sound. I know the brass plates are usually a little heavier sounding, but the way this one turned out, really happy with it. And the assembly is like pretty straightforward. Either you already know everything you need to do and you just, put it all together, or you go through the step-by-step process that Drop, gives you in the website as well for the Karina, so that you wouldn't miss a beat, and put it all together in a couple of minutes. Unless you're like modding stuff as you go along, then it would take a little longer, which is something that I didn't do this time. Well, actually, in all honesty, yes, I did mod stuff. First thing I did as soon as I opened everything up was grab all the stabilizers, clip, Band-Aid mod, and loop them to then put everything together. That's the one thing I did. But since this is my first build with Holy Panda switches, I did not touch them yet. Take a listen. This board not only feels really good to type on, but sounds great, and kind of no matter what you have underneath it. Yes, if you have it on top of a desk mat, it does strip away a bit of that heavier sound from, clacking away on top of the wooden desk itself, but it doesn't take away from that definite sound from each stroke, and kind of can be said that it's a little bit quieter, but I mean, not by that much. And even without any looping on the switches whatsoever, up to this point at least, this isn't the loudest board in the block either way. And I'm actually really happy with it the way that it is right now. It doesn't matter if I'm using a desk mat or not. And that's pretty much it. Custom mechanical keyboards is one of the priciest hobbies you can get yourself into, and the rabbit hole just keeps on going, and you can spend a lot more than what you would need to, copy this build on a fully custom board as well. So this isn't like that ludicrous if you think about it. But for the price of the case plus the PCB plus the plate, you could also grab an entire keyboard from Drop, like a Drop Alt for example. 65%, also has hot swap, entirely made out of aluminum body with great illumination and all that good stuff, for $160-ish, at least as of right now. And that's a pretty good deal. But once you start looking at other stuff in the more custom range like this, and you go through KBD Fence, for example, try to get a Tofu case, which is sort of like a direct competitor to the Karina, at least in terms of the case itself, not necessarily the PCB with the illumination stuff. You would still pay around $120, $130 anyway, without the plate. If you add in the plate, you would probably spend a tiny bit more than what you would have to, get out of pocket through drop. So there isn't exactly a hike there. You actually have a pretty good standing, a pretty good competitive pricing strategy from drop with this board specifically. So no, it's definitely not cheap, but if you want something like this that looks like this with this sort of material, design, and shape, I'd rather go for this on top of the tofu any day of the week because of the different design on the board itself. To me, it's a little bit more appealing. Tofu is a bit too squared off, I'd say. Yes, I know this is absolutely subjective because it's like personal taste in terms of design and aesthetics. But yeah, now you know. Doesn't make that much of a difference, but that's my personal preference. Still, this is an exquisite board that's really well made, looks really good, and all in all, I really don't have anything to complain about. Well, aside from the stabilizers, which drop is still sending in those like sort of not very good stabilizers in the box anyway. So that's something that drop could improve upon. But in all honesty, I also do have to admit one thing. After I Band-Aid modded, clipped, lubed, and installed those same stabilizers on the very, very tight tolerances of this copper plate, I really can't say anything bad about them because they are performing like very good stabilizers anyway. I did have to put in a little bit of work to get them to where they are, but yeah, there you have it. So I'll leave that distinction up for you guys. And that's been it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, so like, subscribe, hit the bell, comment, share, and do all this sort of stuff down below if you're feeling like it. Really helps us out a lot, and I appreciate you. Thanks a lot for watching. This is Gus, and I'll catch you guys later.